So you've seen that people want to talk about demographics, but what exactly is demography, and why does everybody want to talk about it? Demography is a statistical study of populations. This may encompass things such as size and structure, and also things like immigration, birth and death figures. The United Kingdom is currently going through a demographic transformation which is unlike anything we've ever seen before. We're experiencing incredibly dramatic and unnatural changes which will alter the makeup and course of our nation, and many people are against this. The United Kingdom currently has a population of around 66 million people. Prior to the Second World War, we were an homogenous nation that was almost entirely ethnically British. There were only a couple of percentage of non-ethnically British people in the country, and any mass-scale invasions that we had previously experienced were by other Europeans, i.e. people who were very, very similar to us. Mass immigration started to Britain with Empire Windrush in 1948. Waves of Commonwealth immigrants began making their way here. We saw huge amounts of people move to Britain from the Caribbean, Pakistan and India. Although these changes were new for Britain and huge numbers of the public opposed them, these numbers were then swamped from 1997 onwards when Tony Blair became Prime Minister and mass immigration was amplified. Millions of people began flooding into the country. In 1979, net immigration to the United Kingdom was 6,000 people. By 1997, this figure was 48,000 people, and by 2004 it was 268,000 people. Over the last few decades, ethnically British people have been becoming a smaller and smaller percentage of the population. This is partly due to the above-mentioned crippling immigration figures, but births play a huge part as well. A recommended fertility rate of 2.1 children per woman is required for a population to stay the same size in a first world country. The United Kingdom currently has a fertility rate of around 1.8, but the fertility rate is very different depending on which ethnic group you look at. While white British people have a fertility rate of around 1.5, black people have a fertility rate of around 2.5, and Pakistani and Bangladeshi families have a fertility rate of around 3.5 and above. According to the official census in 1991, the United Kingdom was 94.1% white. By 2001, this figure had dropped to 92.12% white, and by 2011 it had dropped to 87.17% white. These figures include all white people though, and not just the ethnically British. According to the official census, in 2001 the United Kingdom was 85.67% white British. This figure had dropped to 81.9% by 2011. The next official census is due next year, and we can use government immigration figures and birth figures to conclude that the United Kingdom will be around 75% white British. What will those figures look like in 2031 and beyond? Well, there are two sets of figures that we can look at to determine the answer to this question, and they both relate to our children. Looking at the demographics of our children is a useful way to determine what our future will look like, because Britain's children are Britain's future. Only 58% of live births in England and Wales were white British in 2018. This figure is dropping by around 1% per year. If fertility rate trends continue as they have been doing for the last 2 decades, by 2027, less than half of births in England and Wales will be white British. Around 1/3 of children in state-funded schools are from minority ethnic origins. This means anything other than white British. This figure is increasing by around 1% per year. If these figures continue as they have been doing for the last 2 decades, by 2036, white British children will be a minority in their classrooms. And what about the whole of the United Kingdom? When will the white British become a minority in our country? In 2013, Professor David Coleman, the Professor of Demography at the University of Oxford, used immigration and fertility rate figures and trends to determine the answer to this question, and the year is 2066. If we allow things to continue, then within 4 decades, we will be a minority within our own country.